And I think I'll present it this way. I like being able to see what slides are coming up for me, and the live Windows, the Teams live sharing is not quite working for me in this setup. So I'll introduce myself, but first just let folks know if you have any questions. This is really open for like discussion and questions. I can answer as best I can. So raise your hand, shout out. I can't see the chat when I'm in this view. So if you ask a question in the chat, Cynthia might be able to let me know there's a question in the chat. Otherwise, raise your hand or just kind of hop on mic and ask your question. So my name is Meredith. I am a member of the Union Power Project Education Pillar, and the Education Pillar is all about demystifying our MAPE, for lack of a better, the short version. We wanted to have people learn more about MAPE as a union, how our self-governance structures work, how our union is structured. We've been running a MAPE Basics presentation every month. That's kind of just like MAPE 101, a bit of an extended NEO, a new employee orientation. And we did a DA Basics, a Delegate Assembly Basics recently. And so now it's kind of the season for people to be nominated for office. So now we're running this presentation, running for MAPE Office, a MAPE Basics presentation. So first in the chat, have you held a MAPE leadership position before? If so, which position? And if so, what position? If not, is there any position that you're particularly interested in? And I'm going to stop sharing and look in the chat briefly to see what people's answers are. Okay, we're getting some responses. Looks like folks are interested in being meet and confer chairs, membership secretary, a local secretary, here to learn more about the positions to better convince others to get involved. Totally hear that. Currently a steward, considering running for a meet and confer chair. Awesome. So I'm really glad to like get a sense of who's in the room, what you guys are interested in, and what you want to learn about. So I'll probably maybe spend a bit more time on the meet and confer stuff and maybe a little less on a statewide secretary. So awesome. Thank you for replying. Vice President. Awesome. All right. So let's go back to the presentation. So why does MAPE have elections? MAPE is a democracy. Our union is run by its members, for its members. To kind of step back from that, our union has members and non-members. Everyone is a non-member by default. That is your, like, when you are a new hire, you're a non-member by default. And you become a member when you start paying dues. And dues are like how we run as an organization. You know, we have about 30 full-time staff members. It costs money to do things, and so members are the people who pay dues and therefore have a vote in how our union runs and operates. All members can vote in union elections. Also, all members can run for various positions. The only minimum qualification for all of these roles and offices is that you're a member. Members can hold local, regional, or statewide positions, and elected leaders represent their members in decision-making and guide member involvement. So it's a fundamental part of us functioning as a democratic, self-led, like independent, self-governed organization is that we vote people into positions to help run our organization and take on certain duties as we've defined them and divvied them up. So in this election, we have a bunch of roles open for nomination and election. Local officers of even regions and special elections, meet and confer committee chairs, statewide secretary, and a political council member. So it seems like a lot of people here are kind of in the meet and confer local officers. So for local officers, we have regions. And I'll kind of have an org chart I will present in a couple slides. So people, officers in even regions are up for election, and special elections means like if there is a vacancy that's like kind of out of cycle. So for example, I'm in local 901, so that's an odd region because of region 9, and then region 9 has local 901 and 902. And so if we had somebody who maybe had gotten a different job, say our treasurer got a different job and we had a treasurer vacancy, and we maybe appointed them, that would be, that person would be like a temporary or interim treasurer and then would need to be elected during this election and would be considered a special election. So getting into the timeline of this, nominations were open September 5th and nominations close October 6th in about a week. And then there is a deadline to accept or decline your nomination, October 14th. Personal statements are due October 20th, and then there's forums October 21st to December 4th. And then we have voting, and the results will be posted on the website. To present that in a way that is maybe a bit more digestible, like calendar format, today's the 30th, nominations close next Monday, and then the week after that, there's a deadline to accept or decline your nomination. Really accept, because if you don't respond to the email, MAPE assumes that's a decline. And then you need to write a personal statement and get that into MAPE, and they put it on the website by Monday, the October 20th. And then the 21st on to when voting starts, that's when people can, have forums, discuss, like present themselves, especially if you have a contested race, and then voting starts in December. So again, the minimum qualifications for being a MAPE officer, being elected into any position, is just to be a member. We really want, like, as a self-governed organization, being a member is like the main thing, and it's like really important. You also have to accept the nomination. It can be, if you think, if you think it's like a really not competitive seat, there's no one else interested, you might like kind of, it might be easy to tune out or like forget, and then you're like, oh wait, I wanted that, and you missed the nomination. You have to accept your nomination. How to nominate is you fill out the form, and remember that you can nominate yourself. Cynthia, are you able to put something into the chat?
Yes, I will.
Awesome. Would you put the internal election page into the chat so people can click onto the form? Awesome, thank you. So yeah, this is what the website looks like, and it says click here to submit your nominations, and then there's this Microsoft form, and you can nominate yourself. You can nominate someone who you think would be really good in a position, and this is how we just have a consistent process to track who is being nominated for what office. You get nominated. Now what? MAPE will be sending you, Sierra is one of our operations folks. She sends weekly accept or decline emails to your work and home email. And you need to respond to the nomination. You can just reply to the email with a decline if you're like, nah, I'm good, appreciate the sentiment. To accept, you have to fill out the acceptance form. And if you don't reply, MAPE, Sierra or MAPE Central is like, okay, that's a decline. And it's important also, if you're involved in lots of things, people think you might be really good at a lot of different roles, keep in mind you can only run for one office and hold one office. So if people have nominated you for maybe meet and confer chair and local office, and something like you have to pick which one. You can't run for multiple offices. You can't have multiple offices at once. Another part of this, after you've accepted the nomination, you want to write a personal statement. If you're in an uncontested race, it's not necessarily required, but it's still good to have something written up. And it is a requirement of contested races, and you don't necessarily know who else is nominated. Like we have a spreadsheet on the website, but it's good to just like submit a personal statement. You want a 300-word limit, so it's not long, and it's important to introduce yourself, introduce your MAPE experiences, and your understanding of the position and what you want to accomplish or do in this position. And if you'll pardon a little editorializing, I think I have noticed that like hopefully we'll address. I think like we want to address is that sometimes people are running for an office, but they don't necessarily understand what that office does. So it's gonna make you a lot stronger of a candidate if you can just briefly convey in your personal statement that you understand the obligations of that office and you know what the job is, and that something you might want to accomplish or do in this position that you care about. So for me, if I was running, I'm a membership secretary in my local, I would talk about how I really want to make sure that we reach out to every single new hire who joins our local or becomes a part of our local, and that's something like I really care about. So that's something that shows like I understand the position and something I want to accomplish as part of the position. And a note about appointments. So if someone in between elections, people can be appointed to a position. In locals, the president's usually the one who does the appointing. And if you want to continue in a position that you have been appointed to, you need to participate in the election process. People have lost positions that they wanted to keep because they didn't accept a nomination. So just because you've been appointed, you still have to like pay attention and participate in this process because people have lost positions they wanted to keep because they didn't remember to accept their nomination, and then someone else nominated themselves and accepted and got the position. So keep that in mind. You want to accept the nomination. That's important. Unless you don't want to do the job anymore. Maybe you appointed and you're like, all right, I'll be membership secretary until December, but then someone else, please take it over. In that case, don't accept the nomination. We're going to be going into some terminology. So I just kind of want to summarize some things. And like, this is honestly a little confusing for me when I started getting involved in MAPE. So your local executive committee is the group of people who are the officers for our local. So that's your president, vice president, secretary, membership secretary, treasurer, and civic engagement officer. And that's often referred to as your local executive committee. So you could say just local officers, or people say like exec committee meeting. Our statewide executive committee is the statewide president, statewide vice president, treasurer, statewide secretary, which is up for election right now, organizing council chair, and political council chair. We currently have a member on the political council up for election, and the organizing council and the political council vote within their own small groups to elect a chair, and that person serves on the statewide executive committee. So good to step back a second and kind of situate ourselves. How are our 18,000 people organized? Delegate Assembly is the sovereign governing body of MAPE. When Delegate Assembly is not in session, the Board of Directors is kind of the people who do the governing, like day-to-day, month-to-month governing of MAPE. The Board of Directors is made up of the statewide executive committee and regional directors from each of the regions, as well as the chair of the meet and confer committee, like overall committee of the chairs. We also have our agency-based meet and confer committees, and then things are broken out into regions, and then locals, which are currently assigned based on your work location per MMB. But that's part of the restructure and part of our conversation and our restructure. But we have 39 locals, 21 regions, and then our board of directors and then delegate assemblies, overall our structure. And so we're looking at elections in our locals. The civic engagement officer is not an elected position right now, but we have these positions in locals, and then two regional directors up for election, and the the statewide secretary. So just kind of see where everything fits in.
Meredith, there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
It says, I'm currently a civic engagement officer for my local. Does that prevent me from running for the political council opening?
I don't know. Ask somebody on the political council. That's an excellent question, and it's unclear because the civic engagement officer is such a new position. So I would talk to Nicole June about that. Cynthia, if you want to maybe put Nicole, I don't. She's on the no, she's getting back from vacation today. So she would be. She's the chair of the political council, and she would be able to answer that question because I don't know, unfortunately. It's a very
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions are probably close to, we're about to get into like the meat of each position and what each position does. If there's any other kind of broader background questions. Okay. So the duties of all local officers are to maintain and build our union. You are now a decision maker for your local. You're going to attend regular local executive team meetings. These are often monthly. Participate in local events, get-togethers, rallies, and you're going to need to coordinate with other roles as needed. So that's your regional director, regional steward director, stewards, meet and confer chairs for the agencies in your local, the leaders of the contract action team, and the negotiator for your region. You are like the first level of MAPE leadership that like people see generally, at least at the local level. There's like kind of, we have the location-based organization of like, depending on where your office is formally situated at, and then we have meet and confer committees, which are agency-based. And locals are generally the groups that have monthly meetings, come together, and so you are going to be like the front line. You're the face of MAPE for a lot of people, and people will come to you being like, "Why did you spend dues money this way?" And it's also your job to like support and understand your local, like figure out the best way to engage people in the union and have people participate, whether that's like sending out surveys, having having meetings with food in person sometimes, whatever that is. For a lot of people, you are like the face of MAPE. Your local president does a lot. Local presidents coordinate local officers to plan and lead local membership meetings. These are usually monthly. And coordinate local executive committee meetings, usually monthly. The way this works, at least in my local, note that there's a wide range of how different locals operate. MAPE is like very big, and I think it's good, like local control. You know, the people who are running things get to say how they want to run things. In 901, and I think this is fairly common, we have a monthly local executive committee meeting that we use to plan our monthly membership meetings. And note that we call them membership meetings, but members and non-members are generally invited. I think that's a big strength of MAPE. In a lot of unions, it's very strict that only members are invited to meetings. And I think it's a strength of MAPE that we include everyone. Editorializing there. You also, as a local president, need to attend the monthly local presidents committee meetings. This is jargonized into the LPC. So the LPC has a monthly meeting. You want to communicate with your regional director to get and distribute important statewide information. The regional directors meet monthly as the board of directors. Coordinate with other local presidents in the region if you have more than one local in your region. Ensure that delegates and alternates for delegate assembly are recruited and that local feedback on DA issues is collected to guide voting. Support efforts to increase membership and countersign checks and/or expense forms as needed. So kind of to like kind of convey, you're kind of a hub for a lot of communication, and you're kind of talking to the folks above you in the like the chain. This is your regional director. The folks parallel to you as a local, like other locals in your region, and then like within your local itself. So the regular meetings are having generally an hour-long monthly local meeting, an hour-long monthly local executive team meeting, an hour-long local president's committee meeting each month. So that's like 3 meetings right there a month generally. Note that there's a wide range of variety in how locals conduct themselves. So time commitments, roughly a fair estimate is 4 to 10 hours a month, just as like a rough guideline. And all of these time commitments are a rough guideline. There's always seasons where there's a lot more going on, like negotiations, where your time commitment might be a lot bigger, especially depending on what's going on in the region and all of that. Local vice president is a really big backup role, and I kind of think of this as helping out everybody and like making sure that things are sustainable and things don't fall apart when people like something like someone has to step back for a bit. In any situation, I kind of think is like someone who's like able to cross trained and like able to back people up on things. So they kind of have to. I think of them as like kind of being a jack of all trade, because you always want some cross training and you don't want things to like be dependent on one person, who might then win the lottery and just kind of say peace out. So local vice president kind of fills the president's duties as needed, especially, but also and broadly fills everybody's duties as needed. A big thing that can be a big time commitment is just having lots of conversations with people, especially new hires, and vice presidents I think often kind of participate in that like local effort of bringing people in and having conversations with people. Local strike captain. So that's like if we, as we kind of are in negotiations, preparing to exercise like one of our biggest one of our biggest like points of leverage. Local vice president's really big on helping organize the entire local, and time commitments, roughly 4 to 6 hours a month. And keep in mind, yeah, local, like all of these roles, like I said, up in like all duty officers, like everyone, generally all local officers have at least like a monthly local meeting and a monthly executive team meeting. So it's like 2 hours of meetings a month, like kind of generally minimum to the extent that we can speak to patterns. Local secretary takes notes during your local executive team meetings, takes notes during your local meetings, and you want to send like draft minutes to local officers to review, sending out final minutes to everyone in the local. Some locals send their minutes to MAPE HQ to put on the website. Maintain organized records for the local. Keep the latest list of current MAPE represented staff in the local. Everybody in the local should get a biweekly email from Davia, pardon me, on like who is in the local. But it's important that like someone's saving that and keeping records of that. Sending invites to local meetings for all people in the local, and making sure that gets regularly updated because your who is in your local changes every 2 weeks. There's always some people coming and going. And send the local officer meeting invite. So those are the meetings where you plan the bigger meeting. This is a position where you're going to be contacting lots of people in mass. So be comfortable. My local is 800 or so people. So especially for the larger locals, you're going to need to learn how to work around the limits Outlook has on the number of people you can email at once and the number of people you can invite to a meeting at once. And like kind of learn to like maybe send those emails out and send those meeting invites out at the end of the day, or like at a time that works for you, because your inbox will then flood back in with everybody's automatic replies. So this is it can be kind of stressful to email even 100 people of something. So that's something, if you're going to be local secretary is good if you're comfortable with that, or like willing to learn to become comfortable with that in order to maintain the records for your local. Local treasurer tracks all your local expenses. We have financial forms. Local treasurer needs to do timely authorization of financial forms submitted by members. These are most commonly reimbursement forms and lost time forms, making sure all the signatures are there, I's dotted, T's crossed, and submit them to MAPE Central. There's monthly reconciliation of the MAPE finance report, bank statements, and local expenses. So you kind of just keeping track that there's nothing weird or odd going on. Present the end of year financial report to local membership and facilitate the drafting of the local budget for next year. There is supposed to be an annual audit of the local budget in each local March-ish every year. 3 local members you recruit 3 volunteers to come look at all of the financial records. So I was just like, in terms of a real life comparison, local treasurer, like monthly reconciliation of the finance report, that's kind of like good for a person who's always really diligent about looking at your credit card statements or your bank statements and making sure you know what each expense is about, and making sure you submit the forms on time. And the time commitment is roughly 4 to 6 hours a month, with maybe more time, during negotiation, or if there's like events, people submitting forms for reimbursement or lost time, and also towards the end of the year when you're summarizing the budget for this past year and then presenting next year's budget. Local membership secretary is the one I can speak to the most because I'm a membership secretary. Maintain membership records and records of outreach. Lead the effort to connect each new hire and transfer for a welcome. Ask them if they want any information. Make a membership ask. You want to maintain a system for following up with new hires and transfers. So membership secretary, like tracking your work can be pretty important. Because you're talking to a lot of people and you want to make sure you're talking to all your new hires. Lead and or participate in ad hoc membership recruitment activities, membership drives, or social events. I know some membership secretaries have been talking about sending out postcards to as a counter to the Freedom Foundation mailings that people get asking them to drop their membership. So it's that's kind of a creative, cool thing as an example of a thing you could be like do as a membership secretary. You want to try to have a conversation attempt with drop requests. In general, by the time someone's put a drop request in, they've already decided, but you always want to know why and leave the door open for them to come back. I've had people drop and then come back. And it's also like you kind of help prevent drop requests because they've already emotionally decided. So by preemptively talking to people when they're new and engaging with folks, it kind of, I feel like the best way to respond to drop, kind of prevent them, is to be engaged and incorporate people into the union ahead of that. Time commitment, 4 to 10 hours a month, a little bit more depending on how many new people your local's getting. Some locals are really small. They're not getting a lot of new people in a given month. Other locals are very big and have a lot of new people every month. So that's but you want to scheduling those half-hour time slots or whatever to chat with people can be kind of time consuming. And it's something that, because of that, a lot of times other people on the local exec team as a whole will kind of help and pitch in on that, depending on how many new people you regularly have. So those are a description of the local officer roles. Meet and confer committee chairs are really important, and they address agency level areas of mutual concern about working conditions. So includes meeting and conferring with agency management, organizing members around strongly felt issues, and communicating between members and management. Pre-meets to prep for management meetings. That's done on non-agency time, but the meetings with management themselves count as time worked. So kind of an example of this is, I'm in agriculture, so I'm not to my agency, but I work closely with health. They're in the other half of the building and a big part of my local, and a lot of people in health felt really strongly about they wanted rest and recuperation time, kind of not in kind of in mid COVID time, after early COVID, and because health was hit extremely strongly by being the frontline response agency during a pandemic. And a lot of members felt really strongly about that. So the health meet and confer organized people around that, and they eventually got a monetary bonus, even though their initial ask was for rest and recuperation time. But that's an example of organizing members around a strongly felt issue. You also, as a meet and confer committee chair, develop and negotiate agency-specific contract supplementals via supplemental bargaining with agency management during negotiation years. An example of that being recently relevant is that we they're trying to negotiate an MOU on the bilingual bonus, like people basically getting a differential for like using their second language skills or third language skills in the course of their work. And that got dropped for a lot of people because it was in a letter in the contract. But for two or three agencies, they had negotiated that into their agency specific contract supplementals. So for those few agencies whose meet and confer committee had negotiated that into the agency specific contract, they got to keep it. And it wasn't this kind of like in between needing to negotiate an MOU about it. Meet and confer committee chairs are also big on holding management accountable to their contractual obligation to meet and confer about workload issues and layoffs. I think a lot of agencies are starting to kind of experience layoff issues. And this is like a really big part of a meet and confer group and chair to like handle that and make sure their agency's doing it right. I'll speak to that a little bit more at the end, at the last bullet point, but you want part of being a meet and confer committee chair is attending the monthly meet and confer committee chairs, the MC3 meeting. So in terms of like definite obligations, you have that monthly hour-long meeting for the MC3 meeting. And then the time commitment for meet and confer chairs is extremely variable. AGS meet and confer for my agency meets quarterly. I think that's like a 1 hour meeting quarterly versus I know so again, I'm like my local has a lot of health people, and health layoff situation was absolutely atrocious and terrible and horrible. And I'm pretty sure Lydia and Jen and the meet and confer team in health were like working on stuff to hold the agency accountable for multiple hours a day for a couple of weeks. It was really bad. But they did fabulous. Like they're like my heroes. Like it was wild. But they were able to, because of their work, they kind of, at least for a while, saved like maybe 100 people's jobs because the agency had basically been completely misapplying things on like 5 different levels. And if the agency had just gone through with it, they would have laid off maybe almost like 100 people. And the meet and confer committee was able to stop that. So it's really important. But the time commitment can also vary a lot. So moving on, the last 2 positions I'm going to talk about are political council member, actually 3, political council member, statewide secretary, and regional director. Political council member. So the political council itself is a statewide committee with 7 members. 5 of those positions are elected and 2 of them are appointed by the statewide president. The time commitment for these kind of next set of positions is a bit higher. The political council has an all-day meeting once a month with lost time, and then 4 to 8 hours a month, roughly, personal time for assignments and follow-up meetings. The political council and like what they do, they define and update the MAPE legislative agenda and platform, identify and define levels of and opportunities for political engagement throughout MAPE. They organize and participate in political and legislative activities, including like the flagship political legislative activity of organizing our annual lobby day. They build teams and leaders throughout MAPE for political action in conjunction with the organizing council. You can kind of see this in the civic engagement officer role, and the political council is playing a big role in that and trying to increase our power and our strength as a union through our engagement in political activities, in like civic engagement. Increase member engagement in legislative and political strategies and actions. Again, like participating in lobby day, reaching out to legislators, door knocking, participating in the convention, the caucus and convention process for both parties. And the political council also recommends MAPE policy changes when needed. So now we're going on to a couple bigger things, and I want to kind of lay out the relationship. Delegate Assembly meets yearly, and when Delegate Assembly is in session, that's the like sovereign body of MAPE governing. Board of Directors meets monthly, and Executive Committee meets weekly. And those two groups kind of, when the Board of Directors is in session, like that's the guiding body of like operationally of MAPE. But when the Board of Directors isn't in session, the Executive Committee, which meets weekly, is kind of the day-to-day governing body, making decisions on behalf of MAPE as an organization. So it's like there's a lot of like power and responsibility in these roles. And you're gonna like decision making. You're gonna be making really like kind of bigger important decisions for the union as a statewide overall organization. In our constitution or our bylaws, the statewide secretary's definition is that the secretary shall keep a record of the proceedings of delegate assembly, the board of directors, and the executive committee, maintain all of the records of MAPE, and perform other related duties as directed by the board of directors. So in a more detailed manner, this means publishing and updating the executive committee and board of director agendas to GovGenda. That's kind of the organizing software MAPE uses. Taking and publishing meeting minutes for the executive committee and the board of directors meetings. Getting all the meeting minutes signed by the president and secretary and then publishing to the MAPE website. You're a member of the board of directors. Again, the board of directors is made up of the statewide executive committee and all of the regional directors. You're a member of the statewide executive committee, which meets every Monday for an hour and the first Friday of the month all day and ad hoc. You are the chair of the governance committee, and the time commitment roughly is like 10 to 12 hours a week. Regional directors, so we have 21 regional directors. The work involved in this is attending the monthly board meetings. So you need to review the board packet in advance. The board meets all day every third Friday of the month. You need to have the discretion, ability, and willingness to deal with personnel issues. The board of directors goes into closed session in order to deal with issues as a union that we need to have a certain amount of discretion about, and like personnel issues. You attend delegate assembly. Regional directors are separate from the local delegations. Regional directors also attend 3 to 4 retreat days a year. So this is a full day meeting on the Thursday before a board meeting. You generally are expected to participate in 1 to 2 board subcommittees or work groups. These often meet monthly, so it's like another extra monthly meeting. Regional directors also need to work with local executive teams. So like participate in the monthly local executive team meeting and local member meetings, and being generally available for advice and helping find answers to questions. So the time commitment's at least 12 hours per month, and sometimes up to 20 or 25 hours a month. Like I know, depending on like what subcommittees you're on, for example, I know like there's a bunch of directors on the finance work group subcommittee. That's a really important one. And they were meeting weekly in the lead up to delegate assembly. So there's seasonality for some of these things. So there's forums, again, starting in late October into December. MAPE itself hosts virtual forums for the statewide contested positions. So that would be political council and statewide secretary for this cycle. This is an opportunity for candidates to share about themselves and why they want to hold the position they're running for, their understanding of the position and what they want to do in that position. And regions and locals can choose to host forums for contested races as well. So become a member to vote. Only dues paying members can participate in our democracy of our union and have their voice heard through voting. You need to become a member by November 21st to vote in the fall election. We use a third-party platform called Big Pulse. So similar to like voting on the tentative agreement, you'll get an email from Big Pulse. MAPE will be issuing a form to indicate if you want to send your ballot to an email different than your state email address. Some people are on vacation. Ballots will be emailed on December 5th with reminders sent out during the period. Voting closes on the 15th. Elections committee verifies the votes by the 19th, and the results will be posted on the MAPE website. We have standing spring and special elections. Every spring we elect delegates. Every other year we elect negotiators, and in the spring there's also electing the election of open positions. So if someone's stepped out and someone's been appointed, or there's just like an open position in a local, those are open for election. Well, we are at the 55, so unless folks have any questions, last minute questions, I will kind of end the meeting, give you guys 5 minutes to transfer between things for whatever you have going at 1. I hope you all have a really good day, and I'm glad folks learned some stuff, and thank you for taking your break time today to come listen to our basics on running for MAPE office. Take care.